Hello and welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. Today we're going to be blending these two images using some basic stamp tool techniques along with some masking techniques to create an image like this. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to click on the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Let's get started. Okay guys, so the first thing you're going to do is open up the images that we have provided for you guys in the description for download. And the first image we're going to work with is our frog layer. So I'm going to hide the orange peel layer. And I'm going to right click on the frog layer and convert it to a smart object. We want to convert it to a smart object so we don't lose any pixels when we scale the image. So I'm going to press Control T now that I have my frog layer highlighted and selected. Control T. And I'm going to move this up to the corner here. And we're just going to click on the bottom right hand anchor and scale it down while holding the shift key. I think that looks good right about there. Just going to scale it a bit past the canvas so that we make sure we fill the entire canvas. I'll press enter to confirm. Now I'm going to press Control A on my keyboard to make a selection of my canvas. Control A. And if you hover along this little icon along the top panel here, you'll see align horizontal centers. We'll just click that one time. Control D to deselect. The next thing I'm going to do is make a selection about halfway in on the image because I want to cut the frog in half right here. So I'm gonna select my rectangle marquee tool and I'm just gonna make a selection here about halfway in, and I'm gonna press Control J to duplicate my selection onto a new layer. I'm gonna Control click on the thumbnail of the layer that I just created to bring up my selection again, and I'm gonna highlight and select my frog layer and press backspace. Well, it says could not complete your request because the smart object is not directly editable, so I'll click OK. We're gonna right click on the frog layer and rasterize the layer. Now when you press backspace, as long as you got your selection up, again, I pressed Control click on my newly created layer to bring up that selection, and I'm making sure that I have my frog layer selected here because we're going to delete from this layer here. So I'll press backspace to delete. So now I'm going to press Control D, and the image looks complete now because we have two halves. So what I'm going to do is if I hide this layer, you can see how we cut it in half. See, we got that half there. So I'm going to select my frog layer and I'm just going to move it over while holding the shift key, click and drag to the corner there, and I'm going to do the same. Let me I'm going to rename this left half. We probably wouldn't have had to rename it because we're going to merge these two images in a minute. So again, while holding the shift key and I have my move tool selected on the left half layer of the frog, I'm going to click and drag. There we go. So I'm going to hide my background layer, well, my white fill layer. I'm going to hide this here, and while the top layer is selected here, I'm going to press Control Shift Alt and E to merge those two layers, and now we can get rid of our bottom two layers. So I'll select both of them, right click and delete layers. We'll click yes. I'm going to bring back up my white background, and now we're going to start creating the leaf using the stamp tool here. So we're going to add the leaf all the way up. So I'm going to select my stamp tool. We want to add our stamp selection onto a new layer. So I'll create a new layer above our frog layer, and we're going to rename this frog. enter. I'm going to create a new layer above that one. And when I select my stamp tool, you want to make sure that where it says sample, you have current and below, because we're going to create our visible stamp onto a new layer here from the layer below it. So I have my stamp tool selected, my hardness is set to 0, and we're just going to zoom in here. Now what we're going to do with our stamp tool, we select our stamp tool, and to target an area, we're going to hold Alt. You should see the little target icon pop up. So I'm going to just increase my size a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to hold the Alt key and target this area right here. And as you can see, it shows you the area that it's targeting. So I'm just going to click once here, and we're just going to keep working around. And as you can see, along the right side of the brush is where it's targeting. I'm going to press Alt to retarget, and we're just going to continue to work. So what this is doing is taking this portion of the image and it's placing it over here when I click. So I'll target that area, and it's just going to be loads of targeting. You retarget so that you don't have the same stamping, and you can even target that area and go over the stamp that you just created. So we want a nice clean look, so you want to make sure that those pixels are matching with this area of the image. Again, we'll target, and as soon as we complete this bottom portion, we'll be able, it'll go a lot quicker, because we'll be able to sample from the stamp that we're completing here. So Alt key, and then just click on the stamp. Okay, now we're going to sample from the other side, and we're going to bring it in over here. So I'll sample here, and we're just going to bring that in. Sample. And when we get this bottom portion, we should be able to use our stamp. Well, we'll sample from this area here as soon as we get this bottom portion in and blend it in well. And you want to make sure that you're adding this stamp to a new layer. So if you haven't created that layer, you might want to revert back now before we continue. We're going to blend it in perfectly, but we have to go through this process. You know, using this technique, there's all sorts of options that you'll have available when you learn how to use the stamp tool. Okay, I think that looks good. And now we're going to sample from the area that we've already created a visible stamp. Okay, now we're going to zoom out to see what we're working with, and that looks pretty good. So now we're going to start sampling from this area and work our way up until we get to the top portion of the frog, and then we'll start sampling from the left and right side on the top portion of the leaf. Now you don't want to stamp within the box because well, excuse me, you want to stamp outside of the box. And don't worry about stamping onto the frog, because we're going to place this layer behind our frog layer. So I'll just sample from this area here and work my way up. So you want to make sure that you come out a bit here. And just continue to work your way up. We're almost there. You see, if you have a little area here that turned black from the shadow, that the sample area must have gone into the black, so I'll just click down here and resample that area there. And now we're going to blend this in a little bit there. Okay, and just work your way up. As you can see, as long as your target is on the portion of the leaf, then you're working okay. And there you go. So you notice that I have that there, so I'll just resample down here and go over that portion. And now we're going to sample from this area so that we can maintain some level of consistency. So I'll just zoom in here, and I'm going to scale my brush down. As long as I have my stamp tool selected, I'm going to scale my brush size down a bit so I can sample this area here. I'll press Alt to sample this area, and we're going to just go and start stamping what we see there. As you can see, some of the leg got in there, so I'll sample this area. And you'll work the same way. Initially, this first portion of the stamp will work across, and then we'll use this portion here to sample from. So these are just some basic techniques for using the stamp tool. And when you start to learn how to use the stamp tool, you'll be able to really perform some advanced level photo manipulation techniques. So again, I'll hold my space bar to sample this area, to move, so I can sample this area here. I'll hold the Alt key to target this area, and I'm going to sample from there, and we're going to start blending in on this side now. So again, you just continue to work across. We just want to create this bottom portion so we can sample from here and work our way all the way up from the area that we stamped. So we just got a little bit more here. And now I'm going to start working in here. See, so now we could target. Let me use my space bar to move over to this side and sample from over here. Okay, and I think now we can start working. Let me just use this here because we want to get rid of some of these. If we start sampling from here, we want to make sure that that we don't have these distinctive marks that will repeat along the way up. So I think that looks pretty good. We might have a dark spot right here, so I'm going to sample there and sort of color that in there. And now I'm going to sample from here, and we're going to work our way up. So I'll click once here to tell Photoshop that I want to sample this area, and I'll let go and then continue here. So as you can see, it'll follow you up. Again, I'll click here to sample from here, sample from there, and now we can work our way up. Click down, sample, click over here, and work your way up. I'm going to use the space bar and to move, sample this area, and there we go. Control 0 to zoom all the way out, and you should have an image that looks similar to this here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our stamp layer. I'll name it stamp layer. And we're going to bring it below the frog layer so that you have something that looks like this. Excuse me. Now select my eraser tool, and I want to make sure that my hardness is set to 0. And we're going to get rid of this line that you see that's going all the way up. So I'll select my frog layer, because what we're going to do is we're going to erase from this layer so that our bottom stamp layer, or our layer below the frog layer, will become visible. And we should have a nice blend when we do this here. So I'll zoom in again, and as you can see, we have that hard line right here. So I'll select my eraser tool, and my brush size may be a bit too large here, so I'm going to scale that down. And I want to make sure, I have my brush tool selected, so we'll make sure you have your eraser tool selected, and you have your frog layer highlighted, and now you can start erasing here. As long as you have your brush tool hardness set to 0, well, your eraser hardness set to 0, you should be receiving this effect, because it'll erase from the frog layer, and we're gonna get that that bottom portion visible. Okay, and we're gonna do the same on the other side and along the top as well. So again, I'll just use my eraser tool to work my way up. And we're going to go along the top, space bar to move around. And we're going to work our way down. Okay. And the last side we'll do here, and work your way down. And then we'll zoom out and see if we have to make any further edits. Okay, Control 0, and I think that looks pretty good, guys. We might have to perform some more blending. So again, I'm going to move my stamp layer above, and we're going to just kind of blend this in a bit more. So I'll select my stamp tool, and I'll increase the size a bit. I'm going to sample from this area here, because I want to add some of the darkness over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to lower the opacity of our stamp so we can have a better blend. So I'll lower that to 49%, and we'll see what we get here. I'll sample from this area right here, and we're going to just add that in there. Now we'll do the same on this side here and add some in there. And we're going to do the same above here. I'll target from here and just add some in there with a larger brush size. Target from here, just add some in there. You know, you might have to click more than once, because we lowered our opacity for a much more natural blend. I'll target this area here, and we'll just blend that in there. And now that looks much better. So the next thing we're going to do is bring up our orange peel layer. So I'll make that visible. You want to move it into place so that this bottom portion aligns with the right side of the frog here. And that looks pretty good. Right about there. Let's see what we're working with. Let me see if I move it down a bit. Okay, I think that looks good right about here. What we're going to do is we're going to use the stamp tool again to add some more of his body in here. So I'm going to move my stamp layer below the frog layer so that we can see what we're working with. And again, we're going to select our orange peel layer, Make sure that's in proper position there. And that looks good there. We're going to clean this up here. You can kind of still see the hard line, but we're going to merge all of this together using the stamp tool. So I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to create a new layer above the frog layer. And I'm going to select my stamp tool. And we're going to scale down our brush. Or scale down the size of the stamp rather. Current and below. We'll target this area here. And we're just going to begin to stamp. Control Z, because we need to bring up the opacity of our stamp here. So you want to make sure that your opacity on the stamp is back up to 100%. We're going to make sure that we have the sample from this area here. I'm going to scale down my brush a bit more. We're going to sample from this area here. And make sure it's a darker area here. And we're just going to work our way in here. You'll resample, sample, and resample. And so you get the good effect there. So I'll sample here, and we're just going to add some more there. Sample, and I think that's looking good there. What's that from here? There we go. I'll zoom out. So now that we have a more blended effect here, so we're gonna do the same along the top here. We're gonna add some more. So I'll zoom in, and we're gonna start adding some more up here so that we can connect the bottom portion of the right side of the orange peel to the right side of the frog layer. So again, my stamp tool selected, and targeting this area here. I want to get rid of this portion of his body here so that it doesn't seem like the orange peel is much larger than this portion of his body. And I'll target this area here, and we'll work our way up. Alright, that looks good. We'll zoom out, and now that looks much more realistic here. So I'm gonna zoom in, and we're gonna get rid of this portion here that's sticking out. So again, I'll take my stamp tool, and we're gonna target this area here, and we're just gonna kind of blend this out right here. Now the reason why it's stamping below the orange peel layer is because we're stamping onto this new layer that is set up below the orange peel layer, so that way we can get a better blending effect. And what we're going to do on this side is we're going to mask out this portion of the orange peel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the mask tool that's on the bottom of the layers panel, select my orange peel, and then select the mask tool, and I'm going to highlight my brush, make sure my foreground is set to black, and we're going to start masking this area out here. We might have to harden our brush a bit, or maybe not, because we need to blend this in anyway. And there you go. Lower your brush size a bit. Now I seem to have gotten in this area here, so I'm going to press X to toggle my foreground and background colors and bring that back in there, and X again, and we're going to continue masking along the bottom here. Okay, we're going to zoom in. As you can see, we got some editing to do right here. So I'm gonna select my mask. I got my mask selected and my foreground color set to black. I am going to scale down my brush a bit and just mask out this area here. Okay, and we'll take care of this this part of the orange that shouldn't be here on the frog. We'll make that, we'll stamp from this area and bring that down. We'll do that now so that way we don't have to come back. I'll scale my brush down, sample from here, holding the Alt key, I sample from here, Control Z, holding, make sure you're on this stamp layer. Let me name this one stamp layer 2. Okay. So we're on stamp layer 2. I target this area and we're just gonna kind of bring this out here. Sample again. It works similar to a mask. You want to bring that in and just sort of get rid of that area there. And we're gonna zoom all the way in. So that way we can really get into that area there. So we're going to sample from here, scale down your brush, and really get in there. So you can keep that much more realistic effect. Okay, we'll scale back out. And I'm going to select the orange peel layer and highlight the mask because we got to bring some of the bottom portion back in. So you see we have lost some of this here. So I'm going to bring some of that back in and make sure my foreground color set to white. Select my brush. And we're just going to bring some of this back in here. Okay. We'll see where it cuts out there. Okay. I want to make certain that I didn't go too far. So I'm going to revert back for 1 minute and we're going to try this again here. There we go. See, we may have gone into the there we go. Okay. Control minus to zoom out a little bit, and now we're going to start blending this in a bit using the stamp tool again. So I'll select my you know what, I think we're okay now that we can merge all of these layers and start, oh maybe not, because we still have to add the shadow. So before we merge our layers we're going to have to add a shadow in, and I think we should just continue blending these in and then add the shadow. So again, I'll select the stamp layer here, and we're just gonna blend some of these in here. So I got my stamp tool selected. I'm gonna target this area here. I'm gonna scale up my brush a bit. Target this area here. And we're just gonna start stamping here. I'm going to, I think we are going to merge them. Let's merge these layers together, and to create our shadow we're going to make a selection of our orange peel, so this way we don't have to go into the actual image and we can place our shadow below it. So I'll press Control Shift Alt and E to stamp all layers, and I'm going to group all these layers and hide them. Control G. I selected the top one while holding Shift. I selected the bottom one. Now I'm going to press Control G to group them. And now we're going to be working with this layer. And we're going to name it Frog again. And what we're going to do here is select our stamp tool And now we're going to start blending these in here. So I got my stamp tool. I'm going to target this area here, and we're going to start blending. Let me zoom in a bit more. Here we go. Now that we're zoomed in here, maybe we can make a better target and stamp. There we go. So just start working your way in there. Target up here and work my way in. I'm going to increase the hardness of my brush. So let's start with 50% and see what that gets us here. I'll target this area here because I don't want that softness. I don't want too much of that softness along the edge here, even though we're gonna create the shadow and take care of that. I still don't want it to be have blurry sort of edges. I like the edges sharp. So I'll zoom out now that we got that portion done. And now what we're gonna do is, you see this top portion of the frog's head, we're gonna sort of add that in over here. So I'll target this area here and begin adding that there. And for this, we're gonna scale back down our brush. I'm gonna press Ctrl Z to get rid of that last stamp that we did. I'll scale down the hardness of my brush back to 0. I'll target this area here, and now we can just sort of add that there. If you have to resample to target a specific area, please do so, because you want this to look as natural as possible. We're already performing, we're already using the stamp tool, and it can be rough if you don't blend it in. The image will look manipulated. There we go. I think that looks fairly good. I'll sample one more right up here. There we go. And now we're going to add the same thing to this portion here. So I'm going to select the orange peel layer. I'm going to Control click to bring up the selection, because I just want to add this portion of the frog over here. So I want to bring up the selection without it when I use the stamp tool. I don't want it to go into the leaf. So now that we have a selection available, I'm gonna highlight my frog layer and target this area here, and we're just gonna work our way in here. Scale down your brush a bit so you can really fit it in there, and just add some of that in there. I'll scale up my brush around this area here, and that should be good. Control D to deselect, Control 0 to zoom out. And now we're going to add the shadow effect. So to do this, I'm going to target my brush again, my orange peel layer, Control click on that, and we're just going to add a brush. So I'll create a new layer above my frog layer, select my brush, increase the size a bit, I just went into the frog here, so I'm gonna history back there, go one step back, now that I have Control clicked on the orange peel layer here to bring up the selection, what I'm going to do is press Control Shift and I, so that I can select, Control I to invert the selection. So I'll press Control I, Control Shift and I rather, to invert our selection. And now we're going to create the shadow here. So I am going to scale my brush down and just work my way in. Control Z. We're gonna make sure that our foreground is set to black, and we also want to make sure that we have a new layer above the frog layer. So you're working on that new layer there, and we'll just create this shadow here. Now we're gonna work our way up here, and it should be coming around there. I actually like the way that worked out there, so I think I'm just gonna mask out the portion that went into the frog. So I'll click mask on this layer here, Control Z, Control D to deselect, mask, and we're just gonna mask this portion out here. Foreground set to black, and just mask that out there. And we'll zoom in so that we can get into that area here, as long as you have the layer icon selected here. Again, we have to select that, Control Shift I to invert, and now we could continue with our shadow effect. I think we have that mask there. So I'm going to actually delete this mask, and what we're going to do is use our eraser tool instead. I'll come up a bit. And there we go. Now I'll zoom in and get in there. See, the mask was not allowing me to get in this area here. And I think this shape here needs to be better here. So I'm gonna actually increase my brush size, and we're just gonna add some more in there. Okay. Control D to deselect. And the last step, guys, is we're gonna this portion of the orange peel seems a bit too large. So we're gonna use the stamp tool to sort of go over this portion of the orange peel. So I'll zoom in, and we'll select our stamp tool, target this area here, and just sort of bring that down a bit there. I'll zoom up, target this area here. Bring my brush size down a bit, target, and there we go. And we're gonna make our brush a little bit harder so that we don't have that soft edge there. So I think I'm gonna increase this to about maybe 70%. Let's see what we get there. Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. Target this area here, and we're just going to get rid of this portion here. Scale my brush down a bit, and really get in there. And now you should have a hard line here, and we're going to get rid of that with a softer brush and a softer stamp. So I'll target the area up here, and we're going to get rid of this hard line that we just created while trying to set up this portion of the orange peel. So I'll increase my brush size, make certain that your hardness is set to 0. And now we can blend this in here. Target, and target blend. There you go. Target and blend. Target and blend. And there you go, guys. You have completed the stamp tool basic tutorial. Please feel free to add some more adjustments to this. You can also work on adding some more of the shadow. I would love to see what you guys come up with. If you can use a different type of animal and a different type of blending technique, please let us know in the comment sections below. If you have any ideas for future tutorials that you'd like us to upload, also please leave us a comment below. If you're new to this channel, please click on the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Until next time.